Hi, this is Joseph Ricca, the Superintendent of Schools in the White Plains City School District, and this is a short update on the proposed 2021-2022 district budget. Hopefully, you'll be able to gain a real good insight into this year's proposed budget in this very short update. Everything that we do, all of our planning is predicated on our strategic plan. Unlike past years, we had to really fashion this year's strategic plan based on the needs that were associated with the COVID-19 pandemic and the ongoing challenges that we were going to be facing as we began this academic year. Without a doubt, COVID has brought with it a great deal of challenges, not just for our families and our communities, but also for our school districts nationwide. Unfortunately, we've seen the virus spread throughout the course of the last year. There's also been additional challenges related to uncertainty in the government, economic uncertainty, civil unrest, food insecurity, concerns about education and access to it, trauma and stress associated with the stresses of the ongoing pandemic, safety and security concerns, and we were, just up until recently, waiting on questions associated with whether or not there would be a federal government stimulus that would assist school districts in paying for all of the necessary supplies to reopen fully during the pandemic. Essentially every aspect of our lives has been impacted by COVID-19. I don't have to tell you that. You're living it every single day. Our staff here in the school district has done really a tremendous job in pivoting on a dime and truly adapting and building a new way to deliver instruction to our children. Without our staff, our support staff, our educators, our administrators, parents and guardians, community partners, certainly the Board of Education, and everyone in the White Plains community, we wouldn't have been able to achieve the levels of success that we did this year. We know that nothing's perfect. We know that there's always room for improvement, but it stands to reason that we recognize that without everybody's support, we would never have been able to get as far as we did, and we're grateful for that. We know that we're going to win this. We know we're going to win this war and come out on the other side, and we're working very, very hard to make that happen as quickly as possible. Since March 2020, the district has been really engaged in a battle. We have been reallocating our resources to support our students and our faculty in order to provide a safe environment in all of our facilities. Our schools were open. They were open at the beginning of the academic year. They remain open today. We had reduced density and we had to shift to a hybrid form of instruction, but our children were able to come into our facilities, and we've increased the number of children that have had access to the facilities throughout the course of the year. We are very, very excited to be taking the next steps beginning on March 22nd to phase all of our children back into our facilities 5 days a week. To date, we've spent about $6 million on barriers, tents, air filtration, PPE, testing, you name it. Everything that we have tried to put into place to provide for a healthy and safe environment for our children and all of our community members has cost a great deal. We're hopeful that we'll see the Federal CARES Act funding of $1.6 million and the FEMA funding of $150,000 or to $200,000 coming through soon. We purchased masks, and we continue to purchase masks and facial coverings for everybody within our district. Of course, you're all very familiar with the cleaning products and the equipment needed to make sure that our facilities are clean for our children every day, temperature scanners at all of our buildings, and increased capacity in our health services department. Right now, we're in the process of purchasing barriers and tents to make sure that all of our facilities are ready to welcome our children back, and additional air filtration systems that will increase the turnover in the air within all of our classrooms. This is on top of our already highly functioning univentilators. We redesigned our spaces to continue to reevaluate our capabilities in terms of bringing our children in and keeping them as physically distanced as possible. This year, we're very proud of this budget for really two reasons. One, it preserves and supports the entire academic program. Everything academically, extracurricularly, athletically that our children had to participate in the past, they will have to participate in the future. And the second point of pride is that this budget is extremely fiscally conservative. We recognize how challenging this time has been for our community, and we wanted to put a proposed budget together that acknowledged that difficulty and respected our community and the taxpayers in it. Our guiding principles never change. We look to protect our instructional core, We're making sure we're asking what do we really need versus what do we really want. We want to make sure that we prevent additional costs, but also preserve all our investments. And any way that we can find efficiencies and ways to do the job better for less. We also delayed programmatic impact or increasing the number of employees. And finally, we've always worked to make strategic changes in the organization prior to making a decision to eliminate a program outright. Those principles remain intact in this proposed budget as well. It's a big process to get to where we are today. We've gone through the long-range planning process. We've gone through the presentation of both the instructional proposed budget and the non-instructional proposed budget. The Finance Committee has reviewed the proposed budget extensively, as has the Board of Education. I'm grateful for all the support of Dr. Vaccaro-Taish, everybody in the business office, the Finance Committee, and all of the members of our community who have participated in creating this document that represents the district's proposed spending plan for the next year. Everything we do in White Plains is with an eye toward improvement. We know that even when we do things really well, we can always do better. We're going to continue to do that next year. Our next steps, and I'm not going to read all these slides to you as you already know, our next steps are going to be reviewing our elementary guidance program, making sure that all of the things that we do in the district are inclusive and provide access to all of our children. We're going to look at our response to intervention services within our classrooms, as well as physical education, activity, and wellness in health, K through 12 next year. We held off on a communications audit this year due to the pandemic, and we'd like to be able to pick that up next year and look for new ways to be able to connect and communicate with our community members. And we'll be reviewing our science curriculum grades 7 through 12. In the district's long-range plan that was presented in December, we took really decisive steps to hold on all of the 2020-2021 non-mandated initiatives in order to manage a potential economic downturn. The threat of state aid reductions loomed large, and we knew that there could be a possibility that we would not receive federal dollars to support the school district, let alone the state. These costs were removed permanently from the development of the 2021-2022 budget. That was about $3 million in 25 positions. They're not part of this budget, and we removed them so that we will be able to support our program and still maintain a very conservative proposed budget. The savings from this current year, along with significant savings related to the reduction in spending due to COVID, things like field trips, travel, conferences, summer school athletics, print shop, and the like, have all helped to for us to be able to make adjustments to come in at our proposed percentage. It's being recommended to fund one-time only expenses to support additional anticipated COVID costs, things like technology, making sure that we have all of interactive TVs in our classrooms. We're moving away from the whiteboards and the smart boards. Additional infrastructure projects due with savings within the departments of about $2.1 million annually through 2025-2026, which will further reduce the tax levy. As a result of these adjustments, the district was actually able to reduce the maximum allowable tax levy by $5.2 million, or 2.65%. Plus, as part of the long-range plan, we planned for a reduction in state aid. Overall, we were able to reduce the operating budget from the 2021-2022 year of $3.62 million, or 1.55%. That's a reduction year to year. The district's revenues and appropriations will be $229,627,400, which is $3.62 million less than the current year. This is primarily due to the reduction in non-mandated 2020-2021 initiatives, like I mentioned before. The major impact to the district's revenues is that of the governor's executive budget proposal. There is a reduction of about $5 million in reimbursement to the school tax relief program, the STAR program, thereby reducing the district's tax levy. The major sources of revenue in our school district, as everyone's very well aware, is from real property taxes, almost 84%. We've been advocating and we will continue to advocate for additional state support through foundation aid. And we are hopeful that we will receive additional state support, but we can't count on it. This is a snapshot of the tax levy cap. It's a real complicated calculation, as you know. And you also know that it's not a 2% cap, as the state would like to promote sometimes. The center column reflects the maximum allowable tax levy that can be raised by the district under the law. The district could raise $7.6 million or 3.88% in the increase in the tax levy for the 2021-2022 academic year. However, as I mentioned earlier, we believe that this would be hurtful to our community given the devastation that COVID-19 brought to the economy, and we've worked really, really hard to mitigate this increase. It means that these dollars are lost to the district in the future and won't be available to manage contractual yearly expenses. However, we've taken this into account in our long-range planning, and we believe that we can successfully manage the next few years and return to growing our instructional programs even when not going to the full cap. The goal of this year is to preserve and protect the instructional core while being fiscally responsible to our taxpayers and our community as we all move through this difficult time. As a result, the projected tax levy for the 2021-2022 academic year is 1.23%, or $2.3 million, a reduction of almost $5.2 million, or 2.65% from the maximum allowable by law. We're very proud of this, and we hope that you are too. The governor's executive budget proposal brings with it a lot of challenges. For the first time ever, the governor's put the reimbursement to districts for the STAR program on state aid runs. The STAR reimbursement is what the state pays districts for the credit they give taxpayers on property tax bills in order to make districts whole for the tax levy they've issued. The governor is now proposing a $4.9 million reduction in the STAR reimbursement to districts. This is actually a reduction in the tax levy, and is projected to continue into subsequent years. It appears that the rationale for this reduction to the STAR reimbursement, and not the traditional state aid program, is in an effort to satisfy the federal government's requirement for the so-called maintenance of effort in order to gain access to the federal funds as part of the next stimulus package. As previously mentioned, the governor is offering a like amount in federal funds to offset the reduction, but this is only a one-time revenue shot, and the reduction is going to continue into subsequent years, and that's going to create a problem. How are districts going to make up these funds? Through the tax levy? That's not helpful to communities. It's unclear how this will actually play out, as they are still negotiating what the New York State budget will look like this year. We hope that we will have a budget by April 1st, and we'll know better how these proposals have played out. Once again, the governor's proposals, as indicated here, don't provide for an increase in foundation aid, and it continues to ignore the court ruling to make districts whole for the appropriate apportionment of state aid in high-needs districts. White Plains, as an example, is owed over $13 million in foundation aid. We've seen in previous state aid proposals from the governor that he's proposing to consolidate or combine together expense-driven aids, which would eliminate the district's ability to forecast aid and would eliminate aid increasing based on increases in expenses. Not to mention, this would also be devastating to our local BOCES. As we saw last year, the proposal includes permanently requiring school districts to pay the full cost of residential placements, and the state no longer sharing the expense. The state's now saying that standby costs we paid to the district's transportation contractor back in the spring, as required by state executive orders, the Federal CARES Act, and the district contractual agreement, will no longer be eligible for aid and will result in a loss of almost $900,000 for the 2020-2021 academic year. It's also been reported by the Department of Budget that the aid will not be reduced and that any aid withheld will be restored. So it's still kind of murky, and there still remains questions on how things are going to shake out at the state level. When we turn to expenses, you're going to see the expenses exactly where they should be in the White Plains City School District, squarely in the program. Thinking about demographic data, each year the district updates its demographic data with Western Suffolk BOCES. Changes in school enrollment occur due to fluctuations in the number of children being born, the number of families moving into the community, and or the number of children attending non-public and charter schools. White Plains City School District is expected to experience a slight decrease in enrollment during the projected periods of 2021 through 2030. This anticipated enrollment decline is largely accounted for by declining births and changing resident characteristics. Generally, the projections are within 1% or 1 point of accuracy, but due to the pandemic, we saw a decrease in the number of kindergarteners enrolling with about 41 fewer students. Parents retain their kindergarten children in preschool, as one may expect during the pandemic. It is anticipated that the district will see a decrease in enrollment over the next 10 years of about 7.5%, or about 530 students. Births have declined, and the question is, will the pandemic continue to impact births in the future? Housing sales are increasing, but no additional housing was completed within the city this year. And due to the uncertainty of when housing developments will be completed and when they're estimated, the numbers of students are not part of these projections. 2020 through 2021 versus 2019 through 2020, we saw about a decrease of 142 students. When we look at staffing, as I indicated earlier, the district held on all non-mandated positions and contingent positions from the original 2020-2021 budget. We immediately modified the staffing budget to reflect this hold on positions and eliminated them permanently from the development of this proposed 2021-2022 budget. There are some slight changes for next year, but none of them have any financial impact. The primary change is in the district needs to support a print shop. The district has always participated with other districts, providing a district-wide BOCES-run print shop at the high school. But given the dramatic decrease in printing this past year, BOCES notified us that the print shop was no longer financially viable. Printing is now going to be done at the building and department level, and complex jobs will be done by contractors that we have on bid. In the meantime, we're also assessing our needs as to whether or not we need to have a dedicated district-wide print shop next year and earmark funds and staffing to support it if it becomes necessary. However, overall savings with the reduction in copies has resulted in a significant savings to budget next year. The goal, hopefully, will be to reduce the number of paper copies all throughout the district moving forward. That's not to say that paper copies are not going to be available. We know how important paper is in a schooling environment, but in areas that we can make reductions, we know that that will also be a sustainable way to secure resources and also live a little greener. The other changes are reclassification of teaching assistant positions to a community liaison aide for the high school, and a reclassification of a teaching assistant vacant position no longer needed to go into security, in order to provide permanent support as a floater for absences and leaves. So whenever there is an absence in security, this individual will be able to float over and be a substitute. There's also an addition of a 0.2 full-time equivalent for art to support the shared positions between the buildings. Additional budget factors to consider are tax certiorari's, employee benefits, I spoke about the print shop already, and other contractual increases that the district has to contend with each year. This view, on slide 25, presents you with the three-part budget, capital program, and administrative budgets. And as mentioned earlier, you'll see that the vast majority of our resources are devoted to our program, exactly where it should be. Slide 26 gives you a little bit more info on what's contained in that three-part budget. And of course, we always remind what happens when a budget fails. What is a contingency budget? A contingency budget is when a budget is not successful, either the first time or even if a second vote is held and is unsuccessful, the budget then moves to what's called contingency. That means that no increases in spending are allowed. So what would that look like if the White Plains City School District proposed budget failed? It would be a reduction of about almost $2.4 million in the proposed budget. Unfortunately, that would mean a reduction in programming and a reduction in offerings. My hope, of course, is that that's not a circumstance that we have to contend with. As I mentioned earlier, this proposed budget is extraordinarily fiscally responsible. And people have said, well, Joe, 1.23% sounds pretty good, considering you could go to 3.88% under the law. But what does that translate to in real life? How does that impact me? I'm glad you asked. In the average assessed home, this 1.23% increase translates to just about $136 increase a year, or $11 a month. We hope that our community finds that to be an extremely responsible spending plan to put forward, and certainly we look forward to discussing in the future and answering all the questions that community members may have related to the budget. I want to thank you for taking these 20 minutes to spend a little bit of time listening about the proposed 2021-2022 academic budget. I thank you very much for all of your support of our school district, particularly during these very difficult times. And it is extraordinarily exciting that as we're talking about the proposed budget for next year, we are in the process of bringing all of our children back 5 days a week. This is a time to celebrate. We are nearing the end of the COVID-19 tunnel. There's still a ways to go. We know that there's still challenges in front of us, but the White Plains City School District has worked very, very hard to support our community, and we'd like to thank you for all of your support as well. Have a great day, and as always, please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions at all. Stay strong, stay safe, and stay WP proud.